Okay, so welcome. My name is Chris Jones. I'm the University of Arizona Gila County Cooperative Extension Agent for Gila County. And this is part of our summer pandemic extension webinar series that I put together. I'm going to be doing these weekly, Thursdays at 11. And I'm calling it, and this time around, we're going to be learning about fire preparedness, called Ready, Set, Go, Fire Preparedness with Kevin McCully. Just a little bit about these programs, as I just mentioned. It's a weekly Zoom webinar. It'll be 60 minutes or less, Thursdays at 11. It'll feature a variety of horticultural and natural resource topics relevant to the environmental conditions and residential concerns of Gila County, Arizona. The recordings will be posted at extension.arizona.edu/Gila, and the University of Arizona is an equal opportunity affirmative action institution. Just a quick agenda for us here. Appreciate everybody coming in a few minutes early to get us all set up. So before 11 o'clock is our login, a little lag time. At 11, started with welcome. I'm your moderator, Chris Jones. Here in a moment, we'll have Kevin McCully give the presentation on Ready, Set, Go, Fire Preparedness. At 11:35, so he's got up to a half hour for his presentation. We'll do some brief updates. I've got an evaluation link I'm going to share, and we'll open that up for some question and answer time with Kevin and myself, and probably just Kevin. Have some time for some open discussion as people wish, and we will wrap up by noon. And if that gets a little bit condensed there after his presentation, that's fine too. This is our presenter. This is Kevin McCully. He's the fuels manager in the Payson Fire Department. Had an opportunity to put together a short biography, and Kevin has served his life and career in the fire community, firefighting, and comes from us most recently, I guess, from San Diego County, where he was a fire captain, and several other roles in fire management. So Kevin, I think at this point, I'm going to stop my share, and you should be able to go to the share screen and bring up your slide.
All righty. How's that?
That's perfect. You're set to go.
All right. Well, thank you for helping me get this message out, Chris, and I appreciate the invitation to be here, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to this. I'm going to try and probably about a 15, 20-minute presentation, and I'm not going to really go super in depth into things, so you're going to have to look some stuff up after the presentation and you know, get some more information. But this hopefully will get you started in the right direction. Anyway, this picture here that I'm starting with is a picture of a fire that was in Southern California, and this person is, you can see the house really wasn't prepared that well. So what they're doing here is spraying some foam retardant on the house. And they make this stuff that's fire retardant gel and foam that it'll last a couple hours, you know, once they spray it on the house and try and protect it. But the objective is not to have to do this, right? So if you do things right, you're able to mitigate the fuels around your house, you hopefully won't have to do this. Let's see if I can get this to advance here.
Coming along?
I'm having trouble. Well, I guess I just do it this way then. All right, so this is the title. This program is actually a nationwide program, and it's developed by the International Association of Fire Chiefs, and you can find information in the Arizona State websites also, and I'll share all that with you at the end of the presentation. Some of you may remember the Woolsey fire in 2018. This was in California. It was a very rich area, a very wealthy area. You can tell by this house, kind of a expensive house, I imagine. But north of LA, and this is a very large fire. But the point with these is that even very wealthy, fire doesn't distinguish between neighborhoods, and wealthy or people that are not as wealthy experience the same thing. Fire's a natural component of the world we live in. So this fire here was actually in Paradise, and everybody's probably heard of that. The devastation there, and tragic loss of lives. But this kind of depicts what the fire does when it gains enough momentum and enough energy. It'll start going structure to structure, and the event, what we want to try and do is stop that and slow it down, give the fire crews a chance to get in there and fight the fires, because at some point, if it's developing too much energy, there's not a lot you can do with a fire engine. So this video here is a video from let me see what IBHS stands for again here. Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. But you can go on YouTube, and you can go on their website, and they have a bunch. This one's from 2011, but they do this every year. One of the interesting things I'll point out before we start here is this corner here was built as really a vulnerable corner in this test, and it has untreated lap wood siding. This house is on a big turntable, and they blow embers in from the right side here, and they can turn the whole house as they're blowing the embers at it. So I'll play this and just let it do its thing. So you can probably see some vulnerabilities right off the bat here. So you can kind of see some of the vulnerabilities of a house, and you know, people wonder, how does your house burn in a wildland fire? And it shows you some the things you're trying to resist. You know, that one corner that I pointed out at the first of the video, it's a place where the embers would circulate and collect and create kind of um, a fuel load in that corner that creates enough heat to start the siding on fire. And so, you know, when you're looking around your house for things to address, you want to look at places where maybe the leaves would collect and when the wind's blowing, and places where maybe, you know, snow kind of flurries collect in the wintertime. And those areas are kind of vulnerable parts to your house. So, you know, like I was saying, you know, wildland fires are very common. They happen every year. They happen in Arizona. I showed you a couple of California ones. This one is that previous picture, and this one is the Wallow fire. Um, very large fires. We had one, I guess, 2004 that came within about 3 miles of the town of Payson. I think it was called the Willow fire. So that happens a lot. Everybody knows about the Yarnell fire. It was a tragic loss of these 19 firefighters. The reason I have this in here is because one thing that is often overlooked is that, you know, doing this work on your house, protecting your property, it helps the firefighters that are out there working hard for you. And it's important to remember that, you know, it's not just about protecting your house, but it's protecting the community and also the first responders that are out there trying to help. You know, people are worried about you know, fires starting in the forest and concerned about fires that you don't really have any control over. So this is a way that you can take control, take responsibility, do something to help your own house. So the first step in Ready, Set, Go is to be ready. This is the longest portion of the whole program, but it's the most important, really. You want to firewise the vegetation within a 100-foot radius of your house. Simple things you can do is to remove pine needles and stuff from the roofs and gutters. You could see in that video what that causes and the danger of that. You know, that video obviously had vinyl gutters, and that's a hazard. I don't think most people have those anymore because they just don't last very well. But you remove the combustibles. I mean, that first 5 feet from your house is very important, you know, that you don't have combustible materials there, that, you know, wood piles and whatever else that can create a heat source to damage your house. Then the driveways is something that's often overlooked also. The important thing, we don't have that many resources. We don't have a whole lot of fire engines to get in there, but when we do, we want to put the fire folks into a place where they're safe so that they can protect your house. They can get in and out safely with a large fire engine. So, you know, an important thing is to create some space around your driveway and above your driveway so that you can get those large fire engines in and out easily. And then, you know, make a disaster plan. You know, that's something that's really important for people to think of ahead of time. So as we saw in that video, you know, 1/8 inch screens on your dormer vents is very important. It doesn't protect 100%. You know, nothing in this is 100%. But if you noticed in that video, the embers that were making it through the screen were very small, and they didn't carry a lot of heat energy with them. So if they're smaller than an 1/8 inch, then generally they're not going to carry as much energy with them, and hopefully that'll keep the likelihood of igniting something in your attic down. So a lot of more modern houses use ignition resistant siding and roofing, because it's being required by so many states these days, that it's really become a standard in the industry when they're building houses. So if you have that, it's a good thing. If you're going to re-side your house or something, look at upgrading to some ignition resistant siding. And if you're redoing your roof, you want to make sure that you have good roof covering, which the asphalt shingles are resistive to wildfire, and if you put a good felt base under them, they can be very helpful. So boxed in eaves, that's kind of a newer thing. You see that on a lot of newer houses where they'll cover the eaves, and they don't have the vents in the side of the eaves like a normal house would, and they don't have the rafter tails hanging out. But that any little crook or cranny where those embers can get lodged is objective to try and remove those and to deflect the embers the best you can. So obviously combustibles around your deck and under your deck are things that you can do easily. You can move those and make sure you don't keep them there. If you are threatened by a wildfire, it's one of the things on your checklist that you need to move away from your house. Dual pane windows, if you're replacing your windows, dual pane windows provide some protection from heat and the radiant heat from a wildland fire, and good thing to replace your single pane windows with. Also energy efficient, right? And then don't have your firewood stacked up next to your house, especially during fire season. You probably won't use it till next winter, so move it away from your house. This is a good picture of a house. It's actually up on top of a hill. Obviously, the vegetation around this house is different than we have here, but you can see, they did a lot of protection around their house. They must have known that they were in kind of a vulnerable spot for the fire, and they protected their house. Interesting thing about this is that it had a bunch of trees around the house, but it was still survived the fire. So this is a little bit not as good a picture, but I like to point out in these two pictures that firewising and making your house safe doesn't mean you have to cut down all the trees around your house. It's a mitigation effort. In this picture, you can tell that the grass and stuff underneath these trees within that 100-foot area of the house was all cut down and managed pretty well, so the fire didn't continue as a ground fire up into that area. And they have some thinning of the trees there too, which probably stopped the crown fire from going through there. But you can see they still have trees up next to the road as a screen for their house. One of the most common things I hear is, I don't want to lose the trees because that screens me from the road. But if you take the time to mitigate the fuels underneath them and trim the trees up and treat them properly, they can be safer. It's not 100%, but you can provide some safety there. This is from NFPA. This is kind of the guideline for what you kind of want to do. You want to divide up your property into 3 zones. Like I was saying earlier, the most important is that 0 to 5 feet, and within that area, you want to make sure that you don't have combustibles up next to your house. You want to make sure that you don't have bark mulch, up to your siding and those kind of things, to keep that little buffer zone there right up next to your house. Then it goes from 5 to 30 feet where you have thinner vegetation, you have, watered, irrigated plantings and things like that. You can have natural vegetation in there too, but you just want to thin it out really well, so you don't have that huge fire load in that area. Then from 30 to 100 feet, you can have more natural vegetation, more vegetation in total, really. But you still want to make sure that it's thinned out, and you look at it in a way that you reduce ladder fuels, they call them, and reduce the amount of fuel loading so that it's not going to carry all the way through your two inner zones. You know, it's the idea is to slow that fire down so that it doesn't have as much energy when it gets up close to your house. So here's a little picture, kind of shows what I'm talking about ladder fuels. Generally, you want to trim the trees up off the ground about 6 foot. The idea is if we can keep the fires on the ground in the smaller vegetation, it carries less energy, and it's going to hopefully be a little bit slower to deal with. You know, we can catch those with fire crews and hand crews and that kind of thing. The center of that shows you basically the ladder fuel effect, where you get a small, you know, you would start with the light grasses, which would get into the medium brush, which would get into the trees. And you can imagine by that time you have quite a amount of energy built up and rolling through there. And the idea is to break that up so that the fire's not able to create that much energy. So people ask, well, how do I cut down what do I do to mitigate the vegetation? It doesn't mean, like I said, going to mineral earth all the way around your house. You mow down the light fuels, keep them 4 inches or less, and you want to keep some root structure in there to control erosion and that type of things. Some of the trees you remove, you want to probably leave some of the stumps and root structure just for erosion control. And then you need to get rid of the trimmings. You can't leave those piled up around your house, because that obviously creates a fuel load and a problem if there was a fire to come through. So in the wintertime or in the early spring, we issue burn permits so you can burn the brush on your property. They're the trimmings. And then there's also during the summer, spring through summer and into the fall, in Gila County, we have free brush pits that you can take your trimmings to, and then they'll take care of the trimmings and burn them later in the year in a safe manner. So I think that's a huge advantage we have in Gila County, are the free brush pits. So we've done all this stuff. We've prepared our property. We've fire-wised. We've got everything ready. Next step is called set. Be prepared. So you monitor the fire conditions, and I'll give you the links at the end of this video. Ready, Set, Go actually has checklists that you can print out, and you can go through the checklist. They're a little more in detail than what I'm doing here, but I think it's a pretty neat tool to get yourself ready. Idea is to get everything prepared so that if you do have to evacuate, you're ready to go. You know what to take. You already have your emergency kit. A big component of it is to talk to your family and friends and let them know your plan, right? So that you don't just come up missing or something. So communicate your plan, work it out with your family and friends. People that live with you, tell them what your plan is, so that if they're not home at the time when it's time to evacuate, they know what the plan is, and they can meet up with you. In Payson, we have Everbridge. It's a notification system. So if they need to notify you about an emergency, a catastrophe, a wildland fire, they can notify you on your cell phone through this service. You can also get it once you sign up. You can get them to email you the notifications also. It doesn't appear that there's any cost, other than if your phone company has texting or data messaging fees, they would still apply when they text you or message you. But it's really easy to sign up with this. All you do is you text that 888-777, and they'll send you a text back that says you're in, and do you want to sign up with your email? And it's really easy. Just put your email address in there, and you're good to go. So if you live in Payson, this is a really good way to get emergency notifications. So when you look at your disaster plan, you want to identify the things that are really important to you, that are important to take, and you want to plan how you're going to transport them, including your animals. You want to have a plan for what you're going to do with them. The idea is that once you make that decision or told to evacuate, you should be able to get out of there within 15 minutes. So part of that also is determining your routes. You need to have a plan for what routes you're going to take in alternate routes. One of the big problems in the Woolsey fire and the Paradise fire and those kind of things was traffic jams and everybody trying to get out at the same time. And you need to be able to have an alternate plan, even if you have to, go find a place on the golf course or something to ride the fire out. That needs to be part of your plan also. Find a big safe zone, like a huge area where you can be safe if the traffic's so bad you can't get out of town. And then all these plans, like I said earlier, you need to make your family aware of them. Even if they, you have older family that doesn't live with you, it's important that they know your plan so that they can, if something happens, they'll know where to look for you and be able to find you and help you out. Other thing is to practice. It seems funny, but go out and practice your evacuation plans. See what the traffic's like getting out your route on a normal day. See how easy it is to change your route if something goes wrong. Go to your backup route. So those are all important things to do here. And one thing I wanted to mention is under the identify things you want to evacuate with, the people that I've talked to that have lost homes, whether it's just a structure fire or within a wildland fire, one of the critical things that everybody laments losing are their family pictures. So that's an important thing, I think, and something that people need to plan ahead. Either put them on digital media or pack them up so they're easy to move. But that's one of the things I've learned over time, is that pictures are really one of the most important things that people miss. So this is the last step. It's the shortest slide here, the shortest section, and simply go. Evacuate early. When you think that the fire's threatening your town or your home, leave early. What that does is it gets you out ahead of the crowd, and also, when traffic backs up, it gets harder to get emergency vehicles in and out of areas also. So, if you just take your time, leave a little early, gives you some, you don't have to be panicked. You can go down to Phoenix and have dinner or something, and do something fun, or go away from your house early, so you're not in a critical situation. Don't rely on the authorities to order you to go. You make a decision yourself, and plan it out to where, okay, if the fire reaches here and it's coming towards town, this is when I'm going to decide to leave. One of the problems in Paradise was that they had a great evacuation system, but the authorities didn't realize how fast the fire was actually moving, so they were behind on actually ordering the evacuations. So one of the things, take your fate into your own hands and decide when to leave. Important thing, don't panic. And you leaving early, that's a way to avoid panic. If you practice and you're prepared, it should go smoothly, and you don't have to get too stressed out about it, and you'll be able to survive and be successful. So here's the information as far as the websites that you can get more information on. There's some of the sites that I stole information on for this presentation, and but they're really good information on there. And like I said, in 20 minutes, I can't really cover it super in depth, but hopefully gives you some ideas and gives you some motivation to go look further into it. And if you have questions or you need more information, you're welcome to give me a call. My phone number is 928-472-5171. So give me a call if I can help you at any time getting your emergency plan together, or evaluating your property for the firewise or fuel mitigation. So that's pretty much the end of what I have, and I'd be up for taking questions. Or
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I want to encourage people to look at the bottom of their screen, and there's a little something called reaction. And if you want to hit something there that gives a appreciation for Kevin's presentation, do the gallery view. Got a few clapping going on. Like that, Kevin?
Oh, thank you.
Um,
Very nice.
At this time, let me see if I can get my slide back up here. Okay, and I'm going to put, I don't know if you can actually hit that and it goes to the link if it's active on your screens, but go ahead and try. I'm going to put that into the chat box at this moment. Let me see. Good. Please complete this evaluation. So you've got the link in the chat. It is really 2-3 minutes max. So no excuses not doing it. So please go ahead and just give me a little bit of feedback on that, and I appreciate it. I've got another thing I want to share. A little poll here to learn where and how you learned about this webinar. So I've got that poll up there. Just go ahead and pick, did you get an email? Did you get it in Facebook? I think I've got this multiple choice. So if you got it in more than the email, Facebook, newspaper, radio, word of mouth, just go ahead and please take a little time to share that information. Been trying to learn how to get this out on Facebook, and I don't know if people are getting it there or not. So, but I'm gonna leave that in progress. And maybe I'll just wait full 60 seconds here before I do something else. Okay, so far 10 of the 14 people present have filled that out, 11. And by far it has been an email message that you learned about this. Had one person say they saw it on Facebook, and 2 are word of mouth. So thank you for anybody who said, I saw this, this is of interest to you, and got some people to participate. I'm gonna leave that open here. Kevin, I'm gonna ask a few questions about some examples for some of the materials that I suppose we can pick up at the hardware store for hardening our house. One is the 1/8" screen that we should be using on our dormers and vents, any other types of openings that we may have birds living in, for example, a little, you know, keep those sparrows out and the grass they bring in. But also understand, you know, if we've got a deck that's open, that 1/8" screen is again one of the best ways to be able to box that in and allow air to move in and out of it like it needs to keep it dry and move water around. So anything you've got on that 1/8" screen that we need to know?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You can get that at, you know, the home improvement stores and hardware stores, that kind of thing. You know, some of the decks and things, it's impractical to do that. You know, you have such a large space there, but you know, make sure that there's nothing combustible under there. That's a really important thing. And then make sure that your siding and stuff underneath the deck is, you know, fire resistant or ignition resistant. You know, those kind of things are good where it's not practical to actually screen in underneath your deck.
Some other places I've been looking around my house that look like, if embers were able to add up in one spot and perhaps get underneath some of the siding in the house, um, flashing, some type of metal flashing material that I may be able to put along where the wall meets the outside, the floor outdoors. Um, any advice or ideas on that? Aluminum, what materials?
Yeah, metal flashing is probably a good idea in certain circumstances. One of the recommendations that they've come up with recently is that up next to your house, you want about 6 inches of area at the base, of your wall where it's, protected, non-combustible, ignition resistant, uh, and that can help out quite a bit. So yeah, and it's, hard to address every situation, but some kind of non-combustible material there to protect your siding would be beneficial for sure.
And lastly, I've been looking at what to put around that 5-foot area, and we haven't had a decorative gravel company in Globe for many years. So it ends up being that ABC, gravel, which isn't always the best, most attractive. But those
Sure.
outdoor tiles, those 12-inch blocks that to make kind of like walkways out of, those aren't terribly expensive, and that might be a good way to create a barrier, that 5-foot barrier around the house that would not be flammable.
Yeah, that's excellent point. You can actually get molds also from different home improvement stores where you can create your own paver stones. Basically, you put the mold down on the ground and fill it full of concrete and trowel it off, and that creates some little stones. You can create a sidewalk with that, and depending on obviously how much money you want to spend on it, you can. But things like that are really important. If you can't get any of that, the rock up next to your house is a good thing also as far as fire safety goes.
Yeah, I was just trying to brainstorm some inexpensive ways that we're able to handle some of those things. We'd all love to have a fine flagstone decking, patio around all of our properties, 360.
Yeah.
It's expensive. So yeah, just ideas that you may have that where we could really have the most impact in protecting our homes.
Yeah.
Living.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Susan. I live in Payson, and I finished the Master Gardener class. So I've been planting everything. But if you've got plants next to the house, like hedges, something like that, as long as you keep them well trimmed, is that okay?
Well, it's all a matter of mitigation. You can't ever be 100% safe.
That's true.
And the rule of thumb is no, you don't want that stuff up next to your house. And some of the hedges are bad and some of them are not so bad. Because some of the hedges actually develop a lot of dead material inside of them and underneath them. And the idea is to keep that fuel loading away from your house a little bit, so that it doesn't have an opportunity to catch the siding on fire, or
Okay.
create enough heat to go up underneath the eaves. Or if you do have something next to your house, important thing is make sure it's not underneath a window or next to an opening, because that's a direct route inside the house.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good question, Susan. Who else has some questions for Kevin?
Hey, Kevin, this is Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
On the one slide at the beginning, it had a tree and it had 3X next to it. Can you describe, limbing the bigger trees, how far up you need to go on that, please?
Okay. So generally, if it's if the tree is over 18 feet tall, you want to go about 6 feet. So regardless, you have a 40-foot tall tree, 6 feet is generally accepted as a good level of protection. What it was showing is the 3 axes. So if you had a tree where there was an ornamental bush or something that was underneath the tree, you would want to trim that tree up 3 times the height of that bush or that planting there, so that if that plant caught on fire, it wouldn't transmit into the tree. The best case is to not have stuff underneath the trees at all, but that's what the 3X was for.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the lines are still open.
Either everybody fell asleep or I did a good job. I don't know.
You did a good job.
You did an awesome job.
Thank you.
And we don't need to make this any longer than it has to be. I mean, my goal is really to make these things 40, 45 minutes. And if we're finishing in that time, I'm really happy with it, because it gets you guys out. We finish this up before lunch. And, but please do me a favor. Go to the chat box, pull up that evaluation, and just give me some feedback on that. It's just a couple minutes, but let you know if this had an impact on you, and then some ideas for other presentations. I'm going to switch to the next slide here then. Kevin, thank you so much.
Kevin?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Do you have to, I mean, are there certain plants like manzanita that you have to be particularly careful about in terms of landscaping?
Yes, absolutely. Some of the natural vegetation, like especially manzanita, is very flammable, carries a high heat load. So you want to make sure that is not up next to your house. And within that first 30 feet, you want to make sure that's trimmed up off the ground and dead fuels removed out of it. And there's a very limited amount in that first 30 feet. And then as you go out to the 100 feet, you can have a little more, but you still want to separate it by, rule of thumb is, maybe about 20 square feet if you're, as far as the crown of the bush would be probably the maximum, and then separate those groupings by about 1.5 times the height of the fuel. So you have, small groupings of about, maybe 20 square feet of crown area, but they're separated by, 1.5 times the height of those fuels, in between them. And that's kind of in the 30 to 100 foot range, if that helps. But, also oak, the oak that we have here is very flammable also. So, any of those kind of natural plants that we have growing around here.
Great.
Okay. I'll move along here. Hopefully I can put up my next slide. Come on. There we go. So just to give a little plug for next week, Cindy Salo will be our speaker next week. She is going to talk about the biology of red brome grass. And I recall meeting Cindy. She was a doctorate student at the University of Arizona when I was a graduate student. And she did her dissertation on this red brome. And the reason why this grass is of importance is because it is largely what carried the Woodbury fire last year down in the Tonto Basin area. It is an invasive, non-native grass. It's very similar to, it's a winter grass that kind of grows in the cold of winter and finishes its whole season in March and April. And it's done, and then it's just this fine grass that's out there that's available to carry fires. So I think a very big concern. And so she's the expert about this. I thought it's a good opportunity to learn about this grass, ways we're able to mitigate for it, and maybe perhaps control it. And so please join us if you can. I'll be trying to get that out with the emails and Facebook page, and any help that you can do to help me share the information about these presentations. I really appreciate it. And again, the website here, extension.arizona.edu/Gila, is where I'm keeping this information. I have the next several presentations through June uploaded, so you can see what those topics are there at this time. And that's what I've got. So, Kevin, thank you so much for your time and presentation today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and I'm going to bring this to a close here.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Chris
Kevin.
and Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin and Chris.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.